Welcome to Let's Be Frank, episode 9, I think. Although maybe we'll mix them around a little bit. So today we want to talk about awareness. It's a huge topic because when I started looking into it, I was thinking maybe we needed to be more specific about one of the types of awareness we're talking about. But the one thing that I found, you mentioned Anthony DeMello, and the quote that really stood out to me was the "what you are aware of, you are in control of." Um, and I think for me, there's a big thing about control and awareness. So um, maybe what are your thoughts on awareness and where we're going to go with this? Because I tend to lean towards self-awareness, but there's so many other things.
Yeah, you're 100% correct. There's this physical awareness, there's emotional awareness, um, there's mental awareness. Um,
Environmental awareness. There's like all.
Correct, so
Yeah,
you can, I suppose, under each of those kind of go and unpack the categories as well. So I think it's the one that we refer to is like the self-awareness, which I think would kind of fall under for me, combined emotional and mental awareness.
yeah,
Um, just because I don't have a better definition of how do you split the two, emotional and mental awareness, for me it's kind of all flows into one day. Um, but something that I have in the last few days been also looking at is the physical awareness of being more aware of your body.
yeah,
Now, it's for a different reason that I started looking into that. Um, Simply because I'm struggling to maintain my balance in my golf swing. Okay, and I stumbled upon this book that that I'm busy reading at the moment, which really focuses on your awareness of the body, and more looking at the Eastern philosophies, Tai Chi principles, in terms of where's the center of your body. Obviously, talks about breathing, etc., etc. Um, but that has made me a hell of a lot more aware now of my body,
yeah,
to the point when sitting down, I actually am now a lot more aware. And I'm only getting to that part of the book now where these exercises are prescribed. So some of it's obviously the common one, which most of us are aware of, the seated meditation and kind of focusing on your breath and so on. But then there's also a standing meditation where
yeah,
you more aware of certain certain parts of your body and your posture and that sort of thing, which I really find intriguing and so on. And I'll have to report back on that because, as I say, this is only something that I've stumbled upon in the last
yeah,
couple of days. Anyway, so back to the awareness that we probably know that we're definitely going to discuss more today is the emotional awareness. How am I
yeah,
feeling? Um, um, how does it affect me?
yeah.
And how do you go about being emotionally aware?
One of the books that really stood out to me on my journey so far is The Untethered Soul, and it's kind of about the voice in your head and the your real thoughts, and then the thoughts that are coming through from the voice in your head, and separating the two and figuring out how to focus just on you and not on the little voice in your head all the time. So that's one of the things that has made quite a big difference to me, is separating the two. And reading the chimp paradox as well, it had the same thing about there's the you and then there's the chimp brain, there's the other you,
Yeah,
the more emotional you and the logical you. And so I think for me, reading has helped a lot with awareness of what are my real thoughts and feelings and emotions, and what's being affected by external things that are out of my control. And I think that's why I like that quote that I mentioned by Anthony DeMello. I know he's got a whole bunch to say on the topic of awareness, but I like that what you are aware of, you're in control of. And
Yeah.
that's with my journaling process, that's been huge for me, because now I'm very aware of what my thoughts are first thing in the morning, what I'm thinking just before I go to sleep, and keeping track, and I can look back on things that I was thinking and feeling, and I can understand where that came from. So I think for me, journaling has been a big part of my awareness journey, my self awareness.
Okay. Yeah, because that is such a great quote that you mentioned there. Um, I think the definition of awareness, we kind of the type of awareness that we're talking about now is um, seeing things as they are without
Yeah.
judgment or interruption, even. That's a great place to start, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Yeah.
Is 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 just understanding, like you say, you kind of know what your thoughts are. You're not trying to force them in a specific direction or whatever, but just recognizing that they're there and don't try to interrupt them. And that's probably a bit harder than it sounds.
What,
If your thoughts are
interrupting
going,
yourself? Yeah.
yes, correct, if your thoughts start to go in a direction and for whatever reason you don't like that, can you actually sit back and allow it to go wherever it wants to go and not interrupt it? But I think it's quite an important part of awareness is to just observe,
Yeah.
almost like in the third person, which is what I think untethered soul and chimp paradox. There's a lot of parallels there
Yeah.
in terms of. Um, correct me if I'm wrong, but the books probably help you to navigate and to get to a point where you want or should be.
Yeah. Those were definitely life changing books for me. So those ones, I say everyone should read them.
Okay, that's okay. Cool. I'll take that as a nudge
Or
to
ask
read those.
ChatGPT what he thinks
Yes,
about those books.
correct. Yeah.
um,
So do you? So if you say that those two books were life-changing books, I mean that's quite a statement.
yeah.
In which way did that help you?
Um, it was kind of just about separating and being aware that there's a voice in your head that's sometimes challenging you in different ways to what you're really thinking and feeling. I don't know, it's quite hard to explain. I need to read them again, actually. Especially now that I've read one. I read the more spiritual one, The Untethered Soul, and then I read the more scientific, but I think that might be a
Mm,
stretch. But the more brain focused one, The Chimp Paradox, second. And I saw loads of parallels about the voice in your head, um, and that it tries to distract you from the moment and from the feelings. Um, and so just to not necessarily to quiet the voice in your head, but to acknowledge that that is not always in line with exactly what you're feeling. It's trying to be a distraction. Um, and I think I actually have. I'm trying to think about over the past few months. I feel like I have quietened the voice in my head, and I'm quite in the moment now because I'm aware of it, um, and I'm not always thinking about something that happened in the past or something that's going to happen in the future. I think it's helped me to kind of be in the moment and appreciate the moments that I'm in. Um, yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but that's how it's feeling for me at the moment. That I'm really like here. I'm not there, and I'm not there. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because we know
Yeah.
that so much of what messes with our what is the correct word? Our well-being is the stuff from the past.
Yeah.
So just being more in the moment and enjoying this and not trying to project into the future, which is not to be misunderstood as we
Don't
shouldn't have
plan.
future goals and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
But hey, this is where I am now, and let me make the most of that, you know.
Yeah.
So I think the other thing is also um, Anthony de Mello mentioned that, you know, societal conditioning and indoctrination, the importance of that and how it kind of creates a false sense of who we are
Yeah.
individually. This is kind of back to the who am I, forget about. So it takes us a while, if you really set out on that path, it takes a while to get out of this societal conditioning.
Yeah.
And also making peace with the parts that you want to leave behind.
Yeah. It's the unlearning.
Correct, yeah. The unlearning part is quite hard.
Yeah.
But it makes sense to me that the process starts with a just kind of be aware of it and
Yeah.
don't judge and don't try to control.
Yeah.
So I I, I haven't done the exercise, so it's not a probably not a fair question to ask. But um, have you noticed? Can you say that there's a percentage of where you find the little voice in your head where it's going, where you want to rein it in or steer it in another direction, or
Um, no, like I say, I feel like my voice in my head has been very quiet since I've been aware of it. And
uh-huh,
I think for the most part, I've been. So this is where I talk about the what you're in control of. Is I feel like I've been very in control of myself and my responses, my reactions to things. And I would say that a few years ago, I used to be a very emotional person, and I would react very emotionally to situations. Um, and I think while that still happens sometimes, um, it's definitely a much lower percentage than the amount of times that it happened in the past. And also now when it happens, so I can think of an example, a very recent example, where I did react very emotionally to a situation. Um, and I took myself away from it and I was thinking about why did I react that way? What were my feelings? What were my thoughts? And I could very easily figure out what led me to that and what my and it was all me. It wasn't anything to do with the trigger or the other people in the situation. It was all things that I had been feeling and thinking myself. Someone suggested something which made me acknowledge that my feelings that I had that were doubts were correct, and that made me
okay,
really upset and unhappy. Um and I was very aware that it was because I had already had those thoughts and I had pushed them to the side and ignored them. I didn't want to think them. I wanted to carry on the other path I was going on. And as soon as someone called me out on it, that made me very emotional. So it was quite nice that I could go away and I could think about why I reacted in the way I did, what it meant to me, and I could validate kind of the thoughts and know that it was nothing to do with the other people in the situation. It was all internal, it was all me. Um, so I don't know if that makes me come across. I worry, and we've spoken about stoicism, that people will think that I'm becoming unemotional or unfeeling or not or uncaring about things, but that's not it. It's just that I'm a lot more aware of where my feelings are coming from and I'm able to control them because of that. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
yeah, it does make sense. So something that I was thinking about now when you explain that is, and I forget who said it, but somebody clever said we must respond, not react.
Oh yeah, I remember that from our
Okay,
leadership
so
alchemy workshop many years ago.
okay,
Yeah,
okay. So if you think about it, react is often a very emotional thing,
yeah,
but responding is something slightly different. So you've had it. So for me, this is my interpretation of it: is if I respond rather than react, it means that I have gone through the emotional stuff. I have evaluated that, and I I can say what I want to say or act in a way that I
yeah,
want to act. So it's almost I think about it. This thing about the voice in your head and how we respond to that. It's almost like a heckler in the crowd.
yeah.
That's the voice going on. But the moment that you ask that heckler to come up to the microphone
It has
and
nothing to say.
say it so that everyone, then he kind of quietens
Yeah,
down, and then no,
yeah,
no, no, I'm okay, I don't have anything else to
yeah,
say. And maybe, like you said, the awareness of these thoughts and so on, and just acknowledging them and so on, kind of helps quieting, okay, cool, say something when you have something to say.
yeah, yeah.
Um, don't just heckle all the time. Yeah.
Add some value.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Um, but I think it's important to go through that phase of acknowledging your thoughts and not trying to control them.
yeah.
Because I don't know, where does intuition fit into this? Where does gut feel fit into this? I don't know. I had a thought or I had a feeling or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that does that play into this at all? Or is this completely off topic?
No, I'm not sure. I think, I mean, I don't understand the mind, but I know that it's very powerful, and I've always been quite a strong believer in the power of the mind. Um, and I tend to trust my intuition. It's been right many times before, so I don't know I don't know where it comes in.
Yeah, how does intuition manifest? Does it manifest as a, I don't know, we use the phrase a gut feeling, but
Yeah,
does it manifest as a thought?
yeah, sometimes.
Um, I mean, sometimes you can kind of, I don't know, you just have a feeling or a sensation or whatever.
Yeah,
That's part of your. But I definitely think I'm trying to think of an example, and I can't now, where I maybe had this. Mm, I had a feeling. We
yeah.
say we had a feeling. We don't say I had a thought. So maybe I don't know.
I had a feeling when I went outside to do my grounding exercise the first time that a bird was going to poo on me, and it did. So I should have trusted my intuition and moved. But then I
Yes.
won 30 quid in the lottery that night, so.
Oh, you see, so it's all true, huh?
Yeah.
Bird bird shitting on you is
It's
good
good
luck.
luck. Like you say,
Uh
go
huh.
find the tree with all of them in and stand under
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
um,
Um,
you go.
the 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 what tips do you have in terms of becoming more aware?
I've already said mine. My journaling makes me pretty aware because I spend the time. It's like a really good exercise. I spend the time thinking. The prompts really help me. The three things I'm grateful for, one good thing that happened today, um, and then I also just jot down things that I'm going to do today or things that I intend to do today or want to do today. Um, so yeah, journaling has been very helpful for me for awareness.
Okay, it's simply because you have that prompt or that
Yeah,
activity where um, you write down
yeah,
certain thoughts, etc. But I mean, so because you have that discipline now, during the day, you feel like I'm paying a little bit more attention.
Yeah.
Would you say that? So
Yeah, definitely.
for somebody who's not journaling or who doesn't want to write these things down and so on, but want to become a bit more aware, um, I wonder what some of the better practices for that would be. So, like maybe say I maybe put a little bit of focus on to I want to become more aware of when I am reacting
Yeah.
emotionally,
Yeah.
or I want to be more aware of, I don't know, let's use the breathing example again, which is kind of like, it feels to me like it's the starting point of all meditation
Yeah.
practices. It's just sit down and breathe and pay attention to how your breath rise and fall and
Yeah.
etc. And then a lot of those practices will also include the becoming aware of your body,
Yeah.
become aware of your surroundings, the noises that you can hear, and so on. And those are all very good things, but what do you do with it? I mean, what is the purpose of awareness? What do we want to get out of it? Why do we want to be aware?
Well, because what you are aware of, you are in control of. That's why we want to be aware. Um, I think it's because I don't know if it's a human thing or societal thing, but I feel like we always want to blame something or someone else for the way that we feel and the situation that we're in. And I feel like there's quite a lack of accountability for your own part in it. Or so that's why I like this thing about what you're aware of, you can control, because this is something that you have influence over and you can affect how you feel through awareness, through understanding what your part in it is, and being able to change things that are making you unhappy. So for me now, it's a health thing. It was a reading thing. It's still a reading thing. It's a journaling thing. But it's all these things that I have control over to improve my quality of life and my happiness and my outlook. Um, and no one else has any influence over any of that. This is it's all things that I can do for myself that will make me happy, and I really like that. That it doesn't matter what anyone around me does. This is what I do for me.
That is very well said. I um, was a little bit, for a moment there, I thought, geez, she's stealing my idea there when you talked about blaming
Yeah,
society or other people, or you know um, for where we are and what we are and so on. And all of these things that you mentioned, are really important, kind of where you are now in your life, where, each of us kind of like at a certain point in our journey and so on. And those things that you are doing now, and which you say the awareness helps with, is definitely contributing to that future,
yeah,
that point that you want to get to. Now, whether we have 100% clarity to where that future is that we're going to or not, um, I don't think it's that important.
yeah,
Um, but these things all contribute to one, us getting to that point that we want to go to. Um, the amount of pleasure that we can derive from the now and the moment, um, and also when we change direction between where we are now and where we think we're heading, we'll have a much better understanding of why we're changing direction. That for me is quite important. I have certain goals, certain things that I want to achieve, but I'm also very, very happy knowing that between here and there, um, there might be a turn off that I like better.
Yeah.
I may want to turn left. I may want to go check out what's there. Maybe I'll come back to this route and maybe I'll end up there where I thought I was going.
Yeah.
But I'm also very happy to accept that I may end up somewhere else,
Yeah.
knowing that it was kind of because I know myself well enough.
Yeah. I really like that. This is a nice sum up. I have one more little quote from Eckhart Tolle, just because he's also great, and it popped up when I was looking at some Anthony de Mello things. Was the primary cause of unhappiness is never the situation, but your thoughts about it. Be aware of the thoughts you are thinking. Separate them from the situation, which is always neutral. It is as it is, and I really like that.
Yeah, really interesting thing about Eckhart Tolle, which I didn't know until recently, is that he initially couldn't get a publisher. If this is now, if I remember the story correctly, that he couldn't get a publisher for his book. Nobody was interested in publishing it, and he self-published. And yeah, over time that has become so popular, and he's done obviously done a hell of a lot of work in
Yeah,
that space, and is such a well-recognized person now. I'm very aware of um, the importance of awareness. And it was such a nice reminder once again to now just look into the subject a little bit and so on. And what was really nice for me is, although some of the books I read quite a while ago decided to implement some of the practices, to now revisit it and go, wow, okay, cool. A lot of it stuck with me, and
yeah,
I still feel that I get the value out of it. So I'm really happy to um, to kind of revisit this and remind myself again about that. And I'll definitely, in a couple of weeks or so, I'll raise the topic again of the physical awareness
yeah,
and what I learned through this exercise that I'm going through now.
yeah. That'll be really interesting. I've also been trying to do my ground every time I go outside to hang washing on the line or to do something outside. I take my shoes off and I go walk on the lawn for a while.
Which I think is part of an awareness practice. I
Yeah,
suppose one can also say, that awareness of being in contact with the earth.
yeah.
Um,
Cool.
fantastic.
Got lots to talk
Thanks,
about.
Ali.
Until next time. Thanks, Herman.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Bye.